What if running more miles is actually the reason you're not getting faster? I know that sounds completely backwards. Every instinct you have about training says more equals better. More miles, more time on your feet, more suffering, more improvement. But here's the thing, the science tells a completely different story. And once you understand what's actually happening inside your body during a 5K, you'll realize that most runners are solving the wrong problem entirely. They're adding volume, when what they actually need is precision. I've talked to so many runners who are genuinely putting in the work, 5-6 days a week, building their mileage, staying consistent, and their 5K time barely budges. Meanwhile, somewhere else, a runner doing significantly less total running is dropping minutes off their personal best in a single season. That gap isn't talent, it's not genetics, it's understanding. And today you're going to get that understanding laid out as clearly as I can possibly make it. If you've been here before, you know this is what we do. Cut through the noise and get to what actually works. If you're new, welcome, and please hit subscribe because this kind of content is what this channel is built on, and you'll want to come back for what's coming next. Alright, let's build something. Here's what this video is really about. Running a faster 5K is not primarily a volume problem. It's an efficiency problem, a strength problem, and in some cases a pacing problem. And none of those three things require you to run more miles. In fact, adding miles without addressing those three things just gives you a more tired version of the same runner you already are. The changes that actually move the needle on your 5K time are changes in how your body functions at speed. And those changes come from specific targeted training that most recreational runners never do, because nobody ever explained why it matters. By the end of this video, you're going to understand the three pillars that actually determine your 5K performance, why running more without addressing them is essentially spinning your wheels, and exactly what to add to your training, not replace, add, to start seeing real, measurable improvement in your race times. Quick thing before we dive in, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I'm always genuinely curious about the geography of this community, and honestly, it helps me feel like I'm talking to actual people, instead of just a camera. Alright, let's get into the first pillar. The first thing you need to understand about running a faster 5K is that the race is primarily an aerobic event. I know that might sound obvious, but most people don't fully grasp what that means for how you should train. When you're racing a 5K at your best effort, somewhere around 90 to 95% of the energy you're using is coming from your aerobic system, the system that uses oxygen to produce power. The other 5 to 10% is anaerobic, meaning it doesn't require oxygen and produces energy quickly but burns out fast. This matters enormously because most runners who want to get faster intuitively focus on speed. They think 5K is a fast race, so I need to practice going fast. And they start doing sprints, adding fast miles, pushing the pace on their regular runs. And some of that is useful, we'll get there. But if your aerobic engine isn't developed enough to sustain the pace you want to race at, all the speed work in the world won't save you. You'll go out fast and fade. You'll feel great through the first mile and fall apart in the last kilometer. The ceiling of your 5K performance is largely set by your aerobic capacity, your VO2 max. And the most direct way to raise that ceiling isn't to run more miles at moderate pace. It's to do specific structured intervals that force your aerobic system to operate near its maximum. Here's what I mean in practical terms. Picture two runners training. For a 5K, runner A adds 5 miles to their weekly total, all at their normal, comfortable pace. Runner B keeps their mileage exactly the same, but replaces one of their easy runs with a structured interval session. 5 repetitions of 4 minutes at genuinely hard effort, close to their maximum, with 3 to 4 minutes of easy jogging between each one. 4 weeks later, runner A has logged more miles and feels generally fitter. Runner B has done less total running and has measurably improved. Their VO2 max, their ability to sustain faster paces, and their race day ceiling. This happens because of how your aerobic system actually adapts. When you push it to near maximum capacity, when your heart is working at 90% or more of its max, when you can barely hold the pace, when finishing each interval requires everything you have, your body receives a very clear signal. We need more capacity here, and it responds by building it. More efficient heart function, more oxygen delivery to muscles, better energy production at speed. None of that happens from adding comfortable miles. It happens from specific, targeted stress at the top of your aerobic range. The interval session I described, 5 by 4 minutes at hard effort, takes about 35 minutes total, including the rest periods. That's it. One session like that per week, done consistently for 6 to 8 weeks, will do more for your 5K time than adding 20 comfortable miles to your monthly total. I'm not guessing at that. That's what the research shows, over and over, across different populations of runners at different fitness levels. Think about the last time you genuinely trained near your maximum effort for a sustained period. Not a sprint, not a tempo run. Actual close-to-ceiling effort held for 3 to 5 minutes. If the honest answer is rarely or never, you've just identified the single biggest untapped source of improvement available to you right now, and you don't need to run more to access it. You need to run differently. Okay, now here's where it gets really interesting. And honestly, this is the part most running content completely leaves out. Let me know in the comments if this is something you've ever heard before, because I genuinely want to know. The second pillar of 5K performance has nothing to do with your cardiovascular system at all. It's your running economy. And this is where the run faster without running more concept really starts to make sense at a deeper level. Running economy is essentially how efficiently your body uses oxygen at any given pace. Two runners can have identical VO2 max scores, the exact same aerobic ceiling, and one of them can run a significantly faster 5K than the other. The difference is economy. The more economical runner uses less energy to cover the same distance at the same speed. Their muscles are more coordinated, their mechanics are cleaner, their legs are springier, and their body wastes less energy on movements that don't propel them forward. They're a more efficient machine. And here's the thing that makes running economy so exciting as a training target. You can dramatically improve it without running a single extra mile. The way you improve running economy is through strength training. Specifically heavy strength training and something called plyometrics, which is basically jump training. Both of these make your muscles and tendons stiffer and more elastic in exactly the way that improves running efficiency. And neither of them requires you to lace up your running shoes. The research on this is honestly kind of remarkable. Studies consistently show that recreational runners who add 2 strength training sessions per week, focused on heavy compound movements like squats, deadlifts, and lunges, combined with some plyometric work, improve their running economy by 5 to 8% within just 8 to 12 weeks, and a 5 to 8% improvement in running economy, holding everything else equal, translates to a faster 5K time, not a little faster, meaningfully faster. Here's a way to think about it that really clicked for me when I first understood it. Your legs are like springs. Every time your foot hits the ground, energy gets stored in your tendons and muscles, and then released back into your next stride. A stiffer, stronger spring stores and returns that energy more effectively, meaning more of each foot strike propels you forward instead of getting absorbed and wasted as heat. Strength training, particularly heavy lower body work and plyometrics, makes those springs stiffer and more powerful. You get more return on every foot strike without doing a single extra mile of running. I know a guy who trained for 5Ks for about 3 years and plateaued hard at around 26 minutes. He was running 5 days a week, doing his intervals, being consistent, and going nowhere. Someone finally convinced him to swap one of his easy run days for a gym session twice a week. Squats, split squats, deadlifts, some box jumps, calf raises. Nothing complicated. 8 weeks later, he ran a 24:40 and was completely floored. He ran less that training block than any block in the previous 2 years. But his legs were fundamentally more powerful and efficient, and his body knew how to use the aerobic engine he'd already built. Now, I want to head off the objection I know some of you are already forming in your heads, which is, but won't lifting heavy make me bulky and slow? And the answer is no, not if you're doing it correctly for running performance. The kind of strength training that improves running economy isn't bodybuilding. You're not doing endless sets of 10 for hypertrophy. You're doing lower rep, higher intensity work focused on developing neuromuscular strength and tendon stiffness, which actually makes you lighter on your feet, not heavier. Elite distance runners like the Kenyans and Ethiopians who dominate world marathons, they do strength work regularly. The myth that lifting hurts endurance performance has been thoroughly debunked by decades of research, and yet it persists, mostly because it sounds intuitively true, even though it isn't. What does your current strength training look like? Are you doing any at all as part of your running program? I'm genuinely curious because in my experience, this is the most underused tool in the recreational runner's toolbox. Share in the comments. I'd love to know where people are at with this. Alright, third pillar. And this one is maybe the most immediately actionable thing in this entire video because you can apply it to your very next race with zero additional training. Pacing strategy. I know. Pacing sounds simple. Go out at your goal pace, hold it, finish strong. Everybody knows that. But the way most runners actually pace a 5K, especially runners who haven't been coached through it specifically, is almost completely wrong. And the difference between correct pacing and incorrect pacing in a 5K can easily be 30 to 60 seconds on your finish time. For free. Without any additional fitness. Here's what typically happens. A runner lines up at the start, the gun goes off, and the excitement of race day, the crowd energy, the fresh legs, all of it combines to push them out faster than their goal pace. Not dramatically faster. Maybe 10 or 15 seconds per mile too fast. Feels great. Feels controlled. Feels like a good sign. And then somewhere between mile 2 and the final kilometer, the wheels start to come off. The pace that felt easy at the start now feels like a wall. Their form breaks down. They slow significantly. And they cross the finish line feeling like they ran out of gas, which is exactly what happened, because they spent the first mile burning fuel they needed for the last kilometer. The research on this is incredibly consistent. The optimal pacing strategy for a 5K is what's called even pacing or very slight negative splitting, meaning the second half of the race is equal to or marginally faster than the first half, not dramatically faster. Not a huge surge at the end after a slow start. Just a controlled, sustainable effort from the beginning with enough reserve to hold pace or lift slightly in the final stretch. The reason this is physiologically superior comes down to how your body manages lactic acid, the byproduct of hard effort that accumulates in your muscles and eventually forces you to slow down. When you go out too fast, you produce lactic acid faster than your body can process it, and it accumulates rapidly. Once it crosses a certain threshold, your legs lock up and your pace drops involuntarily. But if you start at or very slightly below your sustainable ceiling, you stay just below that threshold for most of the race, manage the accumulation more effectively, and still have something in the tank when you need it most. Practically speaking, what this means is that your first mile of a 5K should feel almost uncomfortably controlled. Not easy. You should be working. But you should be working in a way where your brain is saying, I could go a little faster right now. That feeling is correct. That restraint is exactly right. The payoff comes at mile 3, when the runners around you are dying and you're still moving. Here's something worth thinking about. The best 5K races you've ever run, the ones where everything clicked. Did you feel like you had a little left at the end? Or did you feel like you barely survived? Because the races where you barely survived and ran your best time are actually rarer than people think. More often, the PR performance feels strangely controlled for most of the race and then hard at the end, not desperate from the beginning. That control wasn't a waste. It was the strategy working. And pacing in training matters just as much as on race day. When you do your interval sessions, those 4-minute efforts we talked about earlier, pacing them correctly is everything. The goal is to run each interval at the same effort. If your first interval is significantly faster than your fifth, you went out too hard, and the later intervals lose much of their training value because you're running them in a compromised state. Consistent effort across all intervals beats maxing out early and grinding through the rest every single time. Be honest, have you ever blown up in a 5K because you went out too fast? I think most runners have. It's one of the most common race day experiences out there. And if you've done it, it's not a fitness problem, it's a pacing problem, and it's completely fixable. Let me pull these 3 pillars together now, because separately they're each powerful, but when you see how they interact, the whole picture becomes really clear. Your 5K time has a ceiling set by your aerobic capacity, your VO2 max. That ceiling rises when you do targeted high-intensity intervals. Your ability to run at speed efficiently, your running economy, improves when you strength train and add plyometric work. And your ability to actually express both of those physical qualities on race day depends entirely on pacing intelligently from the starting gun. 3 pillars, 3 completely separate levers, and none of them require you to add mileage to address. This is why two runners with almost identical weekly mileage can produce such wildly different race times. One is training with intention across all three of these areas. The other is just running more of the same. Volume is a factor, but it's further down the list of priorities than most people realize, especially for the 5K distance where the race is only 18 to 30 minutes long for most recreational runners. The practical framework is genuinely simple once you see it. 1 or 2 interval sessions per week targeting your aerobic ceiling. 4 to 6 repetitions of 3 to 5 minutes at close to maximum effort, with equal rest between each one. 2 strength sessions per week, focused on heavy lower body work and some jump training. This doesn't have to be complicated. 45 minutes is plenty. And then an intelligent race day pacing plan where the first mile feels controlled and the final kilometer is where you let everything go. That's it. You could stay at your exact current weekly mileage, restructure it around those 3 elements, and produce a meaningfully faster 5K within 8 to 12 weeks. I've seen this happen repeatedly with runners who were completely stuck and thought they needed to just grind out more miles. Here's what I want to leave you with, because I think the real takeaway from all of this goes a bit deeper than just a training tip. Most of us have been taught, by fitness culture, by intuition, by well-meaning advice, that more effort always equals more reward. Run more miles, push harder every day, never skip. The grind is the point, and there's a version of that mentality that's genuinely useful. Consistency and discipline are non-negotiable, but the pure more is more approach to running improvement misses something fundamental. Your body doesn't care how hard you tried. It responds to specific stimuli. The right stimulus, delivered consistently and recovered from properly, produces change. Everything else is just accumulating fatigue. Running a faster 5K is not about how much you love running. It's about understanding what your body needs and giving it that, with precision and patience. And when you do that, when you add 1 targeted interval session, when you start showing up to the gym twice a week for your legs, when you line up at the start and consciously hold back through the first mile, the results compound in a way that feels almost surprising. Because you're not working harder, you're working exactly right. If this clicked for you, if you're walking away from this video with a genuinely different picture of how to approach your 5K training, I'd love for you to subscribe. We make content like this every week, built around the actual science of endurance performance and explained in a way that you can actually use starting this week, not textbook stuff, real frameworks for real runners. And if you want to go even deeper on the interval training piece specifically, how to structure it, how to know if you're at the right intensity, how to progress it over a full training cycle, I made a dedicated video on that exact topic that I think you'll find incredibly useful. It connects directly to everything we just covered. It's on your screen right now. Last question before I let you go. What's been the biggest obstacle in your 5K training? Is it fitness? Is it consistency? Or is it pacing? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one, and your answer might shape what I make next.